Hello, welcome to the G.I. Joe New News Review. I am David Allen. The following content was originally intended for the G.I. Joe fan club, but due to unforeseen circumstances, this content will no longer be used in that venue. And so I wanted to share them with you here. I hope you enjoy. Hey, I'll be right there. I'm trying to get past this thunder tank. It's in the way. I'm sorry. Hold on. God. Let me move this thing out of my way. God, that thing's so big. Woo.
That's what she said.
Dude, yeah, that was a setup that was like, I can't make that one. I'll see if they make it, but it was teed up.
Well, thank you. I am David Allen. We are here on the G.I. Joe Fan Club Live. I am here with Eduardo Fire. We are also here with Hawk Sanders, who's not on visual, and our special guest today, Brian Flynn. Thank you, Brian Flynn, the co-founder, designer, and owner of Hybrid Toys and Super 7, also with Dora Dramalis. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, Hybrid Design is the design studio that we started. Dora Dramalis is my wife, and obviously I started Super 7 in my part-time while working at the design studio, and Dora helps out behind the scenes with a lot of the less glamorous aspects of running a company. And so, as we kind of go forward, it's always been like, well, it's Brian's. And it's like, yeah, it's my baby. But at the same time, Dora's been here for 22 years too. So going forward, maybe we should call ourselves co-founders.
Well, in my research, that's what I found. So that's why I said that. And I hope that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, she's never going to come on video ever. So.
She's done some interviews, but she did an interview, I think it was on Super 7 I watched.
Yeah, they kind of pried it out of her. They were like, come on, people need to know that there's a woman in here too. Like, it's not just a bunch of dudes hanging out together. Like, all right.
And you're right, exactly. That's what people would think. So I want to go down a little bit of your credits, if that's okay, for this interview, to give us a little perspective as far as where you've come from, what you've done, things like that, to help us with this interview. So you're a collector yourself, and when you were younger, you were a baseball card collector, you are into the skateboard scene, you love Godzilla, Shogun Warriors, vinyl toys, and you were into the punk rock record scene when you were younger, as I understand it. You also—
most of that I'm still into. We don't grow out of— none of us grow out of this stuff. We may take a few years of vacation and then come back, but we don't really grow out of it.
So I understand in school you took some classes, printing and press work and design classes and stuff like that in school when you were growing up.
Yep.
And then you went into graphic design in Texas. And I can't remember.
Wow, wait. What school did you go to in Texas, Brian?
For what it depends on which grades we're talking about. My dad was in the military, so we bounced all around Texas, and my extended family has been in Texas for generations. So I've got lots of places in Texas.
And I was going to get to that, Hawk.
Okay, sorry, jumping the gun.
So I'm assuming by this point that either Hawk is in Texas or from Texas, and then we're going to discuss this together.
Probably. So as I was saying, in your youth, though, you traveled around. You traveled from Texas to Florida, and then you summered in New York, and you were into the punk rock scene and stuff like that during that. But then you ended up going to school in, I think it was Texas, for graphic design.
For college, yes.
Right, college. Then you worked in Oregon for Nike, and you
Yep.
did some design on watches and things like that. And you were the designer on the first LeBron James logo. If I'm
Yep.
not missing any of that.
Yeah, I mean, the shorthand of that, yes. If we talk about graphic design training or anything, I didn't know what graphic design was. So I had a job. So I made fanzines and I made the record covers for my friends' bands and their demo tapes and stuff like that. And I would help draw t-shirts, but nobody, it was just making stuff. And then I worked at Kinko's and I'd paste up things for people and how to make them come out right. And in high school, there was a trade class that you could take. Like some kids took machine shop or auto body, auto shop. They had, in my high school, they had a print, a graphic arts thing. So you learned how to do silk screening. You learned how to run a one color printing press, make films. You learned how to do black and white, photography development, like all the steps for pre-press. And then when I went to college, I knew I wanted to do something creative, but I knew I wasn't going to be a painter. And my grandma said, oh, you should take graphic design classes, or what was called commercial art, as something to fall back on. And I took a commercial art class. And they're like, all right, we're going to make a logo. We're going to make a t-shirt. We're going to make a record sleeve. I was like, I already been doing this. This is a job. And so I did that. When I graduated from design school, my first job was Fossil Watches. So that's where the watches came from. I worked there for 15 months. I was employee 8 for their art department. And then I left.
They actually called you employee 8?
No, I was employee number 8 in their art department. As Fossil became a company and started growing, I was the 8th person that was ever hired in their art department.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So now Fossil, you'd be like, oh, they're this huge thing. Like when I started, we were in a strip mall that they rented up with a roll-up door that they spray foam closed, and we shared computers because they didn't have enough money to pay for a computer for everybody. So it was a long time ago in that world. Then I went to Nike. Yeah, I built Nike Towns. I did a little bit of footwear design. I did LeBron's first logo. I did a bunch of other stuff there. Left Nike, moved to San Francisco, and opened up my own design studio, which is hybrid design with my wife.
Now that brings me to my next credit. So you did a printing fanzine magazine about the fight figure scene, punk rock scene. That was self-published from 2001 to 2007. Super 7 fanzine magazine.
Yeah, so that's where Super 7 started. It started out as a magazine about Japanese toys, because at the time you could buy Action Figure News and Toy Review. You could buy Tome Arts. Toy Fair theoretically existed. You could get information, because we all collect toys. We all aren't completely siloed. We collect everything. And in that world, like, I could find out all the action figure information I needed. There was plenty of information about that. But there was very little about the Japanese side, both historically and present. And in Japan, you had Hyper Hobby and Figure King, but they didn't translate that, and they generally didn't look backwards very much. So I thought that there was an in-between place for fun to do something, and I made it like I made punk rock fanzines back in the day. I didn't expect anyone really to care. We figured there'd be a couple hundred people that liked it, and that would be about it. And it just kind of hit a nerve with people, and that's the genesis of Super 7. It started out as, basically a love letter to collecting toys, specifically at that time, Japanese toys, because other people already had the action figure side handled. It wasn't until years later, as Super 7 got bigger, that we were able to start crossing back over into the other side of collecting. These are all eBay notifications. If you keep hearing all that, it's all like eBay reminders. So I'm going to turn that off.
Wow,
I expect you're very... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Hawk.
It's so amazing. I never connected the dots. I actually picked up the Super 7 magazines, early on in the day, and I never connected that it was connected to the toy company now. Interesting. Yeah, because in the first issue of the magazine, so if you go to Figure King and Hyper Hobby to help drive sales of the magazine, they would partner with different
toy companies and make a repaint figure that was exclusive to the magazine. You still had to pay for it, but it was exclusive. And to do it, they would print the redeemable coupon in the middle of the magazine, and you had to cut it out and mail it in. Yeah, exactly. All of us, it's less than perfect.
That means you have to buy 2 issues in order to do that.
Hey, look, I'm not
especially
if the
coupon, especially if you take the coupon out and it kills an article or a great piece of art.
Exactly.
No, but he was in the business.
That was the standard during the day, though. Toy Fair was doing Toy Fair had the rip out in the middle too. If you wanted the Toy Fair, one, that was kind of the standard at that time.
Yeah, so we wanted to replicate that experience. So in the first issue of the magazine, we had a bear model, 54 Godzilla in clear gray, and an M1 figure that you could order in. Then we went to people that we knew in Japan and said, hey, we'd like to make a recolor. And then you collect the coupons and you order how many. And that was actually the beginning of us making toys. And that actually becomes downstream to what the toy company is today.
What about your first store on Post Street in San Francisco? And then
that was,
and then your Gorilla Biscuit toys.
Well, so the Post Street store was funny because the Post Street store is complete ignorance. We're like, we want to make the store that we want to go shop in. How hard can it be to run a store? You know what your rent is. You know what you have to pay people. This is how much you have to sell. That's it, right? It's that simple. It isn't that simple, but we were just like, screw it. Let's open a store. And it wasn't that simple, but we figured out how to make it work. And obviously the store has actually moved throughout San Francisco. It's been in 4 different locations, but it's still going. And then we have a store in San Diego as well.
I was actually in San Francisco over the weekend.
And you didn't stop by.
You know what? Part of it
and
is
it was lovely this weekend. It wasn't raining or anything.
Yeah, no, I was there. I was there Sunday and part of Monday, and I think part of it was I was with my dad and my stepmom, and they're not toy collectors. But hey, if you have, if you have model airplanes and model tanks, I'll let my dad know, and that'll be a good excuse to do a return trip and track you guys down.
Whatever. Yeah, I mean, we're on 16th between Guerrero and Dolores. Anytime you're in town.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to write that down, actually.
So then, but wasn't your first toy the Gorilla Biscuits toy based on the music group?
That was our first music toy. We'd made tons and tons of toys before then, but obviously with Gorilla Biscuits, they were a peer band for us. Like that was the first band that got big and was legitimately like amazing. That was like, these are your friends. This isn't like, the guys that are, when you're in high school, a guy that's 4 years older than you might as well be 50. This was our peer group, and they are still to this day, top 2 or 3 bands all time for me. And their 7-inch, the debut 7-inch, has this gorilla on it. And I was like, he looks like a fight figure when you brought that up, one of the Japanese styles of making figures. And I was like, we should just make a Gorilla Biscuits figure. I don't know how many people will care, but we should just make it. And so I got in touch with Civ. And same thing. He's like, yeah, we're all from the same world. Like, fuck it, let's do it. Because they grew up collecting G.I. Joes. They're a couple years older in some cases, but like Civ's like 2 years older than me. So he was still in my peer group, but he was also right at that straddling line where he collected 12-inch G.I. Joes. So if you look at the vinyl figure we made, the 5th release of it came in the green Footlocker and came in unpainted army green. And so it came in a G.I. Joe style Footlocker box, and then it was unpainted green like Army Men. Because if you go to the first 4 Rev releases, they had a thing where they put in a trade insert into the 7-inch and would trade rare, test pressings or colored vinyl editions for old G.I. Joe figures. So those guys grew up collecting 12-inch G.I. Joes. So toy collecting and punk rock actually go way, way back. Like Danzig is a huge toy collector and always has been. You know, Tim from the Big Boys, Pusshead, like all these guys. Tesco V from the Meatmen is a huge toy dealer out in Michigan. You know, all these guys collected toys, and it's always sort of been there. It's just not as obvious or overt sometimes. And so, yeah, it's ironic that, you know, we're on the G.I. Joe podcast talking about Gorilla Biscuits because it came through, because in the 80s, they were putting out things in records saying, we'll trade you rare records for old G.I. Joe toys.
Wow, I actually never knew about the punk rock figure collecting connection. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's funny through the randomness of the world. Somebody that I know had gone to a trip in Japan, and Glenn Danzig had given him a handwritten note of all the things he was looking for. And he was like, oh, here's my shopping list from Glenn Danzig from like 1984 in Japan. And he was like, here, you know, you might want this. I thought you might find this interesting. Yeah, it's like completely fascinating. And now we're making toys with the Misfits.
Well, well, there you go. Exactly. And that's a kind of your biography in a nutshell. I'm sure I missed a couple of things here or there. And your wife, which I didn't know, Dora, has been with you pretty much this whole time. She went to school with you in graphic
we met in
design
college.
and went with you to Oregon and worked with you there and stuff. You just obviously hit it off in college, and that was it.
Yeah, she's way smarter than me. So she's way smarter and way more talented. But yeah, I mean, obviously, you know,
And that, sir, is the right answer.
It's true. I mean, hybrid design,
Definitely.
the design studio is still a design studio. We still do work, a ton of work. And, you know, as Super 7 started to turn the corner, I said, I think I can take a year off hybrid and just focus on Super 7. I think we can turn the corner and make this into into something more than a hobby. And as that happened, and as Super 7 has gotten bigger, then Dora is actually now working, you know, all the time at Super 7 too.
Can we go back just 1 second though, Brian? And can you
Yes.
explain that, like those early beginnings of Super 7? Where did you have a full-time job and you were doing this on the backside?
Oh, I had a full-time job until, let's see, probably 2018.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm kind of shocked here. Yeah.
Well, I mean, because quite frankly, even as Super 7 really started to get into like a real, you know, starting to become more real, if you want to call it real, and have legitimate employees, probably closer to 2014, outside of the store. The store always had employees because that's how they generated money. But having like, oh, I work in the office kind of thing. But even then, the business could support paying them, but it couldn't support paying them and me. So instead, it would pay them. And then I kept my job, and I would work on Super 7 at night. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. Blah, 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 and then give it to them, and then they would execute it during the day, if that makes any sense. So it took another probably 4 years of doing that before it got to that point where I was like, I think it's the point where if I push on it and give it 100% of my attention, I think we can really turn the corner and start really growing the business. And so I would say that probably, like I said, wasn't till maybe 2018 most likely.
Is that
Wow,
where you
that's it.
started working on Masters of the Universe for Mattel?
Probably about a year before that.
It's just so impressive. I mean, you know, to have that kind of passion, it makes me want to buy more Super 7 toys. It really does.
Oh yeah.
Great. I love that answer. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, I don't think it would be realistic for anybody to say, I'm not saying this against everybody, but just like, it's not really realistic to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to start a toy company and start doing all this stuff. Like, it doesn't magically work like that. And it's almost like when you hear about, everybody talks about bands or other things that they've become an overnight sensation. It's like they're an overnight sensation that spent 15 years grinding it out.
Yeah.
And then all that experience, if you will, finally, like the wave finally turns over and crashes on shore. And then it's like, oh, look how big it is. I think it's a similar analogy to that. Like we spent a lot of time doing it. And then the real reality is, if you're talking about the toy world, we're still an infinitesimally small thing over here. We're like, we're a grain of rice, on a cargo boat at this point, compared to everybody else. We're still, while it is, hey, we're making and doing stuff, it's still within a very small Venn diagram of people that are looking and care about it.
I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. And I've seen you try to explain these things in some of these other interviews you've done, to understand the numbers and how much sell and how much you have to have in order to manufacture. All these things that you're always talking about. And I don't think people really understand it. They're nodding their heads like, yeah, okay, Brian, that makes sense. But I don't think they understand it. And look, I've been buying toys and I've been buying this stuff for decades, 40 years, since I was a young kid. And I've admired you for a long, long time, that you're the brother that did right and got to do what we all would love to do. But you're explaining that it's not what our imagination thinks it is. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of putting foot to the pavement and doing the job, getting the work done, and stuff like that. And I appreciate you saying that.
It reminds it. Oh, sorry. It reminds me a lot. I originally lived in South Florida, and I did a lot of acting, and there was like a lot of being an extra and just taking gigs, because it's like, I haven't worked in a month or two. Let's see what's out there. Oh, I'm in the background of a music video, and it's like, okay, well, it pays. It's a day's work and it pays. And it's like, yeah, you gotta. I think there's a friend of mine who said, sometimes you gotta feed the monkey.
That monkey could be a lot of things, but yes.
Yeah. In this case, it's like, yeah, you gotta keep the bills paid. Something that my dad used to say is, yeah, sometimes you got to take a job because you got to keep the wolf at bay.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's. I think we're talking about maybe two different things. I think the thing that's hard for people to realize, which is what you're talking about, David, which is everybody you're talking to and everybody that's listening right now is heavily invested in this thing. And you have found like-minded people on a Facebook group, on a blog, wherever. And so you're like, I know everybody I know, hundreds of people talk to me about this. And it's like, that's great. Hundreds of people is not enough to make something. You need thousands of people or tens of thousands of people. And you can have something, I'll try to maybe put it into perspective for everybody to understand. Like, the most successful, two HasLab Kickstarters, right, are the
sail barge.
Huh?
Sail barge.
The sail barge and the his tank. And it's like they sold something crazy like 22,000 his tanks. But once again, use the words I said, something crazy. 22,000 his tanks is like, that's insane. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God. They got everybody. And that's for classified, which is arguably the most popular format for G.I. Joe, and quite honestly, probably the most manufactured line at that sort of 6-inch, 7-inch, highly articulated scale. Like, it's super popular and everything. So that's the highest watermark you can get. Then you start coming back down to, okay, now that classified line is supported by a massive rollout that you can buy at every Target and every Walmart. So as collectors, it's easy to get into, it's easy to fall into, you can pick it up. Aside from the whole scalper thing, we don't need to talk about that. But what I'm saying is it's an available line that an everyday person can go to the store theoretically and buy and get into and get excited about it. And that's the kind of numbers you can push on your best day. Now go, okay, this isn't available at most of those stores and you have to seek it out at specialty. And it's a pre-order and it's this. Those numbers get smaller and smaller and smaller. And so when people are like, oh my God, they're making they're making thousands, so many of these things. And it's like, no, there is a very fine line at a smaller size company where you can get away doing these things. And you can't get away with that if the organization is bigger, but you have to find that middle ground. But I would say that everybody's idea of what the volume that these things sell at is much, much, much smaller than what it is. That's why Hasbro and Mattel's business is selling toys to kids. Because guess what? There's millions of kids buying toys. How many grown adults are going into your local Target or your local Toys R Us? There's a lot, but it's the same 25 dudes. And it's like, okay, there's 25 adults, but there's 1,000 kids. So tell me what the market share is for
You're
that.
telling the truth, because I've worked in the toy industry in the retail world for nearly 25 years for different retailers. I'm not going to say their names. And I've been the manager of the toy departments in these retailers all that time. So I know exactly what you're saying is actually factual, because you have 150 moms come in with their Rugrats, tearing the place up, and they're buying toys. But then you have the 10 guys at 8 o'clock in the morning ready to come in there to buy the exclusive. There's a big difference. You're 100% correct.
Yeah.
I would also say that you have the kids. You're talking about the 150 moms, David. If those 150 moms have like kids apiece, and they want to make sure that each kid gets one toy at least. Not to mention those 25 dudes that come in, first thing in the morning to grab what comes off the pallet. The thing is that the kids, they have their parents, and when you're a kid, your parents have just money growing off trees. And then with the adults, they're going in looking for that one exclusive, but they're also thinking, well, I also got to make sure I have the bills paid. So, they might not go for any big ticket items when they come in. They may be going for that one or two figures.
Trust me, everybody that's coming in is always looking at their wallet to see what change they have in their wallet before they buy whatever they're going to buy. The parents typically are going to try and get the cheapest thing they can for their kids to shut them up. The dudes have to look to see, can I afford 6 or 4 or 2, and which are the variants, and blah, blah, blah. It's a totally different mindset, but you're right. They do have to check their wallet and things like that.
Yeah. But that's a little different than what Brian's doing. Brian, this is what I'm seeing from Brian. What you've done is a love letter to the fans. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I'm making stuff for me first and foremost, and then I'm assuming if you are like me, that most, you're my age, you grew up with these things, you've bought these other toys. What do you not have? What do I not have on my shelf? That's mostly what I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And so that kind of brings us full circle. You got the license from Mattel to do Masters of the Universe, and you started doing characters that really were never done, or versions of characters that were never really done. And that led us down an interesting path with Mattel, and you kept getting different licenses: Thundercats, Silverhawks, G.I. Transformers, so on and so forth. What was that process like? Did you really have to go to Mattel? I know you're in the same state as Mattel. Are you in the same city as Mattel?
No, Mattel's down in LA. LA and San Francisco might as well be, two different worlds in some ways.
Okay.
No, I mean, we started with Reaction, obviously, versus, what is the Ultimates now. Because, I grew up first and foremost with Star Wars figures. That was, 19, I can't say 1977 because I was on an Air Force base, so I didn't see Star Wars till 1978. And then I bought the Kenner figures. So
Yep, I had some.
my first toys. So yes, I had Hot Wheels and some dump trucks, and I had Planet of the Apes, and I did have some 12-inch GI Joes, because we lived, like I said, at that point I was living in an Air Force base in Germany in Bitburg. So when you move, you have a weight restriction every time you move, and you move every 2.5 to 3 years. So every 2.5 to 3 years, you get rid of half the shit you own. It doesn't move with you. And so my mom worked at the thrift store on base. So toys would come in all the time. So I had 12-inch GI Joes because they came from the thrift store. I had Planet of the Apes Mego figures because they came from the thrift store and stuff like that. But toys that I bought new, my thing had always been Star Wars 3 3/4. So when we talk about why we ended up where we did with some of the GI Joe stuff, it's because my first love is 5POA. Like, was Snake Eyes badass and Cobra Commander cool? Sure they were. My version of that is like what would happen if those had been 5POA figures, and what if they look like the cartoon? Now I've got the thing that I've never had that I always wanted. Like, why doesn't this thing look like that thing? And it stands up easier. Not to be heresy here, but but there's a lot of other people that bought GI Joe, and their whole thing was like, I love the articulation on this, like being able to move the elbows and swivel the arms in your second wave, and pose the legs and all that. That's what blew their mind. And so, in all of this, you're dealing with everybody's respective love of what they grew up with, and whether or not that translates to what you loved can be sometimes viewed as the positive and the negative. Like, you missed the whole point of this. I'm like, well, I missed your whole point of this, not necessarily my whole point of this.
Now that we're on Super 7 and GI Joe, and the fact that a lot of it is cartoon inspired, looking like it came straight out of the TV. But my question, though, I'm fascinated. How were you able to pull this off? Because we're talking about a cartoon that debuted all the way back in the 80s, and so I'm just wondering, like, how were you able to get these toys to look like the cartoon? Did you have to jump through any hoops? Did you have to bow before somebody and say, please, can I get permission to do this?
No, I think the thing here is that, to be quite honest, Hasbro has been incredibly gracious with us in allowing us to do what we want to do with GI Joe. And to be frank, if I'm speaking about it, from their corporate side, my job, in their view, is to help support the collector line to grow the business bigger. They can't make everything for everyone, and nor do they want to. They have something that they're making. Like, if you guys, I'm sure I'll remember when Classified came out, everybody was like, this is the worst thing ever. It's heresy. I hate it. It's terrible. This isn't the GI Joe I want. 2 years later, they're like, why aren't you making more Classified figures? Where are they? They have their business in it. And they saw us, or at least my assumption is, or what they've inferred, is that they saw us as, you guys have a different point of view on a lot of licenses, and that people seem to be very interested in your point of view. And then they said, what would you do for GI Joe if you had the chance? And then I pitched what I would do. And then they sat down and said, does that vision complement what we're making or compete with what we're making? And to be very fair to them, their answer has been, to this point, and continues to be, what you're doing is complementary to what we're doing. So they're very supportive and have been very, very good about letting us explore whatever weird dark corners we want. And for me, Sunbow was a very big part of that. Like, I don't have that. It's such an integral part of my memories of G.I. Joe, yet I don't feel like I have those physical manifestations of it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so we were like, hey, we want to be really, really slavish to this and go down this route. And it started with Reaction, and then same thing, it took a while and for them to see what we were doing with Reaction. And then it was like, hey, can we make this, in this, 6-7 inch scale, and having them feel like it does not compete with what's going on with classified. Easily you could have somebody internally that says every dollar somebody's spending with Super 7 may not be a dollar they're spending with Hasbro. But instead they're like, no, we don't see that. We see this as additive to the G.I. Joe brand. And it's not where Hasbro is going corporately right now. So let them go, let them run. And they've been really, really great.
I myself am really, I've heard you refer to it as the deep cuts. I'm loving the deep cuts. Like they're doing exactly what you intended on doing. So I'm hunting Raven right now, which I haven't found her in the wild.
Oh,
but
yes. I just found out today that you can get Raven from Big Bad Toy Store. So I'm
or
like, oh wow, she's out
Super7.com.
or Super7.com. There you go. Get straight from the source. But my Hawk's mentioning deep cuts, and yeah, we've had some deep cuts. We have Raven. We had Radioactive Snake Eyes. We had I think my favorite deep cut so far has been the Snow Serpents with the clown faces from
the Game Master
Games
Drone.
Master episode. Yeah, the Game Master Drone. When I heard that was coming out, I'm like, is it going to be the Toy Soldiers? But then I saw it was the Snow Serpents with the clown faces, and I'm like, oh wow, kudos. They went really obscure. I love it. Now, is there any place that Hasbro has said, sorry guys, but you can't go there?
I think there's only one thing that they've told us that we can't go there, and I think everybody knows what that is because nobody makes it. There's an obvious costume. No, it's not this. There's an obvious costume that you can't use anymore.
Okay, I think I get it.
But to their point, they don't make it either. So, it just, but for the most part, no, obviously when we submit stuff, we have to tell them where it comes from, why, all the kind of stuff, but they've been, the same thing that, they let us make the PSA figures, which I couldn't believe that they let us make. I mean,
those are great, by the way.
Still to this day, when somebody posts a picture of them, people go, that's a really funny April Fool's joke. And we're like, no, we actually made it. They're like, yeah. I know. I've been tricked too many times. I'm like, please go buy it because we did make it. They met it. They let us make Red Laser.
That's a good segue, though. You just kind of segued into April 1st, which is tomorrow.
Yeah.
What jokes are you gonna try to perpetuate?
So we will debut it here for you guys. Like I said, there's a lot of speculation. People are pretty smart, so they picked up on a lot of things, which is the Cobra Escape Pack, obviously modeled after the transit system there. But you've got B, C, and D that stand for right off the lid here. B, C, and D is Baroness, Cobra Commander, and Destro.
Nice.
Oh, yes.
Very nice.
So,
nice.
In the miniseries, and you've got Cobra Commander dressed as a homeless woman. You've got Destro as a construction worker, and Baroness as a nurse.
Very.
Oh, man.
And then you have your file card on the back.
Oh,
that's why we love Super 7. That's why we love Super 7.
Honestly, about the only thing missing right now is the twins, and then just a little audio clip going, "Your fault, his fault."
It's right there. They're right there. They already made them.
Oh boy. Okay.
So wait, when you're saying you have
That is a great surprise. That is a great surprise because I know there was the convention set that was Shipwreck and Snake Eyes and the snakeling outfits, and then you had the little the guard robot. So to see more Pyramid of Darkness, that's just, especially the disguises at the end. That's awesome.
Yeah, what we don't have is we don't have Junkyard pulling off his costume and then letting Cobra Commander run away.
Oh yeah.
We got a mutton junkyard. We got a mutton junkyard. We could use it.
You do have a mutton junkyard, but
Yeah,
you can't take off the costume.
You know what? I think we have Cobra Commander figures. We just need to get like a cape or something from another figure, and then find out if anybody does 3 3/4 inch like baskets, and there you go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, David, you had an idea on how to pull that off?
Yeah, they already did a Cobra Commander with a cape. Just take the cape off it, put it on the darn old lady, and there you go. Put your mutton in them, you've got your play set.
Yeah, there you go.
But
there you go.
But that's the thing. You were leading to something about the red laser. God, there's a whole nother thing that you're getting into, and I've speculated with my friends. I've speculated with Chris McLeod, a whole bunch of people at different conventions I've attended. Like, God, what is the? There's no limit. They can do anything. There's Brazil GI Joe. There's Action Force. There's you name it. You know, I've already speculated that maybe you've already eliminated all the possible Cobra Commanders. Maybe we might see another Snake Eyes, Cobra Deleco, whoever else. Yeah,
you can go all over the place. You know, you've got the India stuff, you've got the Glass Fleet stuff, there's stuff from all over the place.
Fun School.
Yeah,
you do Superman
stuff. There's a lot of fun to be had in there. I think it's there's just so much fun stuff to do that it's like, okay, hey, if I want, like we obviously already made Ninja Coup and a bunch of the other ones from Brazil. If you want a real Ninja Coup, you're going to spend a small cars payment. So here's a way to get a Ninja Coup, but by no way is it a bootleg of the other one either. So it's an affordable way to also have some of these characters that you might not be able to chase down any other way, if that makes any sense. Or it would be cost prohibitive to do it.
It does. It's kind of like when Hasbro did the Tiger Force Outback, which is a very rare figure in England to try and find it because it was very limited. But they did the classified version of that first, and then they're dragging out all the other versions and stuff like that. But it's a lot more reasonable to do that with Super 7. I've got 6 Cobra Commandos and 6 Snake Eyes here, but they're all different. They're all different variations of those characters, and there's different variations still to be made that you haven't made. So you have, and I like the fact in the beginning of this, you said you had 10 waves already planned out, and I'm sure you've had to shuffle a few things around and adjust.
There's a constant state of this,
right?
There's a constant state of reshuffling things.
Well, one thing that I like is that, having all these versions of Snake Eyes and all these versions of Cobra Commander and, and other characters, it means that then you have, if like, for example, you like one version of Cobra Commander over the other, you actually have that option. It's like, oh, we do have this version of Cobra Commander. So, hey, there's my default Cobra Commander. You don't have to wait until another wave from Hasbro or somebody to see if, maybe this will be the Cobra Commander I use. You have a lot of options right now.
But also, I know that Brian is famous for saying he's got to, in these waves, he's got to balance these waves as far as the characters, because they have to keep certain characters in these waves. Like the last wave had another Snake Eyes and another Duke from the Arena of Doom or whatever it was called.
Arena of Sport,
yeah, from the first miniseries. But those are versions of those characters that never were done before.
Where else are you going to get a glow in the dark trident?
Right. Right. It's
Yeah.
not like Star Wars where
Yeah.
every single scene of a character, you can literally redo the movies with the figures that they've made. Every variation of every character in Star Wars. But G.I. Joe's
Well,
never really
and
had
once
that.
again, if you come back to my starting, where did I start? In Star
Making the stuff
Wars.
that
And then
you never had.
exactly. So I am that person that goes through there and goes, how come they never made the Snake Eyes like this? Or how come they never made the Baroness from this episode? Or that said, I'm not making Bikini Baroness. Just I'm putting that out there right now because it does come up. I'm not making a Bikini Baroness. That part of childhood we don't need to talk about.
That was the top of my list.
Yeah.
You know, well, you know what? We have Nurse Baroness, so you know that should that should satisfy.
That's a whole different. That's a whole different fantasy, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. My thing is, I'm just wondering with the Duke variations, are we ever going to get chest wound Duke from the '87 movie?
Oh, that'd be funny.
There's. It all just depends on how far and how long we can go. As long as people keep supporting the line and they're interested in some of these characters, I mean, there's so many, for me, so many cool places to go. Now, the question is, do other people say that? Because I go straight to, back to the original miniseries. It's like, oh, here's Scarlet in a full, winter head to toe winter coat with a Geiger counter. I'm like, oh, that would be so cool. We've never gotten Scarlet like that. But do people want that? I don't know. Do you want Destro in a scuba uniform?
Hey.
I want Ramar. Where the hell is Ramar?
We've Ragnar?
Whatever his name is. He was in the first.
Ramar.
He's the giant slave fighter. Yeah.
His sister.
We've talked about, you've got him, you've got the girl that gives Duke gives her ring, the slave girl that helps him escape.
Yeah, where's that set?
Don't think we haven't talked about it.
I know. I know, because now after this set gets publicly revealed, the floodgates are open. We know that you can do anything you want to do.
Within reason, yes.
You know what? You're talking Ramar and Selena, and here I am thinking, not just about, like, you go back to Pyramid of Darkness, we got Satin, and then we have Snake Eyes and Shipwreck in their disguises. Revenge of Cobra, Revenge of Cobra, we've got Honolulu West. We've got that cowboy girl that Roadblock runs into.
We get asked about that one all the time. We get asked there's all sorts of stuff. It's like, do you use the Viper? Do you use I'm blanking on his name right now, the news reporter that goes in continuity?
Hector Ramirez?
Yeah, Hector Ramirez.
Yeah, Hector Ramirez. Yeah, Hector Ramirez
Like,
Hector Ramirez from 20 Questions.
Exactly. So, like, and those are offbeat characters, much less like, here's all the cool different things for the regular characters and all that. Like, I think, you were talking about Christopher McLeod. We talked about it before. We had to it didn't work out with how the assortments ran. It'll come out later, but like originally the plan with Raven was if she shipped, as an example, 4 to a case, 3 of them would have the Cobra patch, but 1 would be without, since at the end she rips off the patch and throws it away. And it was going to be like this secret, don't tell anybody chase thing, but it gets messed up. We didn't do it. It gets messed up because how they and a bunch of our retailers orient their systems is you have to be able to launch the product in store and online. And if it's a variant online and they get the one they didn't want, say there was a chase, and they order a whole bunch hoping to get the chase, and then they go, oh, this is wrong, and I return it, it becomes problematic. But we've done it in the past. Like we did when we did the Misfits Earth AD, one of the early pressings of Earth AD, they mixed up the color plates. So the hair on the artwork is printed on top of the black plate, like green. And so we'll come back to Silent Interlude. And so what we did was we made same thing. Like we made 3 out of 4 with the regular artwork and 1 out of 4 with the variant artwork, just on the card back. And we didn't tell anybody. And about 8 weeks after it launched, I had a text from a guy going, "Hey man, a buddy of mine swears he got a Ghoul's Hair variant of the Misfits figure, but I know it's just Photoshop." And I'm like, "No, that's real." He's like, what are you talking about?" And I was like, "Yeah, back in the day, you could find this every once in a while in a used record store and they wouldn't know what it was. And you'd be like, oh shit, we found the weird hair variant one. And you would buy it. And I was like, no, and then that just caused pandemonium. Like, oh shit, now I've got to go out and find one of these in the wild. There's still something fun about not knowing everything and having discoverability that makes sense to actual fact and what actually happened. Like if I just made a paint variant of Raven to make it and it was short packed, everybody'd be pissed because like, why are you trying to make me buy her twice? But if it was like, oh no, there's one where she doesn't have the patch on, like, oh, that makes sense. That's funny. Like now I need both.
Yeah, I certainly think from the collector standpoint that it adds an element to it because we're missing that now of that ability to go out and on the hunt. You're looking for these very exclusive items that you might not have known about. There's a little bit of that lost as it's gotten lost throughout the time. And sometimes when you go to the conventions, you run into that and you're like, you start to see things that you didn't know had come out during the day. I don't know if that makes sense or if it sounds a little more like ramble.
Oh yeah.
I appreciate
But there's a fun to it. There's a hunt. Yeah, that's why, even in this conversation here today, you're like, oh, I haven't found Raven on Peg yet. I want to find her on Peg versus, well, I know I can buy it at Big Bad or I know I can buy it at Super 7, but I don't want to. I want to go to the store and find it on the Peg.
I want the easiest way.
Yeah.
It's not just the easiest, but it's the fun of it all. It's like you're walking in and you don't know what you're going to find.
Yeah.
And that there's a certain joy to that part. It's frustrating joy, but when you find it, you're like, oh.
But I've done that for years and years. It gets tiring after a while.
That's why the web store exists.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, since you brought up the convention variants, Hawk, this is a good segue into kind of San Diego Comic-Con, and there was a tease, I believe, a while back, and I've debated with a few of my friends online and stuff like that about what this tease for the store is going to be this year. And I love the fact that we got the convention, the bat that was in the comics, that variation, and then this set and the cool snake eyes that I had hang up. There was the variant of issue 21 Silent Interlude. All that stuff was for the convention and the Super 7 store last year. But what I've heard this year is that the Super 7 store is going to be themed based off of, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, Tiger Force and Python Patrol.
No.
Damn it.
I'm correcting you if you're wrong. Is there Tiger Force and Python Patrol stuff in your future? Yes. Is that no? Obviously, last year was the Cobra Recruitment Center at San Diego Comic-Con. So now that you've been recruited, what's next for you? So, something. I don't know. I'm like, should I be talking about it yet or not? But it's no, it's Cobra International Operations. So now it's an international operations headquarters at San Diego. So now you've been in, and now you're going to get deployed. Where are you going to get deployed? It could be anywhere.
In space. We have to fight the Fatal Fluffies.
Fatal Furies.
Fatal, whatever the hell they're
Fatal
called.
Yeah,
Furies,
Fatal
right?
Fluffies. No, it's Fatal Fluffies. Wow, I'm just well.
I've been
I'm thinking
saying
of
it wrong this whole
the.
time, man.
Yeah, no, it's Fatal Fluffies. What I'm thinking of is the musical Book of Mormon, because there's an entire song about the people getting deployed all over the world to do their missions. So now I'm just thinking of a Cobra version of that song.
I had
people
not
like-
gone there. I'll be honest with you. I had
Yeah,
not gone
yeah.
there.
Yeah. Of course, now I'm picturing somebody, and Brian and David, you get deployed to Island of No Return.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
There is there's gonna be some fun stuff with it, but that's the whole point.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be fun. And you know, as much as I would like, and we haven't been able to get ourselves organized well enough yet to be like at the Atlanta JoeCon or anything else like that. I hope it's a place for everybody to come and hang out and talk about G.I. Joe, and also just like, here's a moment of celebration of what G.I. Joe could look like. Granted, we're talking about Cobra,
Yeah.
but G.I. Joe could look like if you really got to live in the world of it a bit more. And that's really the exciting part about it, really
Yeah,
celebrating G.I.
I
Joe.
try to put myself in your headspace and figure this out, but I'm having a difficult time doing it.
Well, it's months away still, so we got plenty of time.
Yeah.
So you won't be making it to Joe Fest at any point this year.
No, and to be fair, they have reached out to us, and I have not properly followed up with them. We would love to go. I think it's more of a matter of logistics and stuff like that. I'm going to sound completely terrible, but like for us in San Francisco, getting a crew and product to first, if I'm going to do any product thing, I got to work on it 12, 15 months ahead of time. And then I'm like, all right, how many people I got to fly down? How many hotel rooms I got to go? How much it becomes a little bit more, because it's not like I can show up and throw a drape over a folding table and a 10 by 10 and go like, hey guys, let's talk about G.I. Joe.
Why not? You could be Destro, bring your Halliburton, just whip the stuff out. Why the hell not?
If we're going to show up, I need to show up. I don't need to show up necessarily like we're doing at San Diego, but I want to show up and do it right. And quite frankly, it's just been so crazy with sort of the world, if you will, between just trying to get things manufactured in Asia, supply chain, dealing with everything. Is just like, I can get myself around what I need to do at San Diego and New York. Everything after that has been, that's a nice to do right now, but not, I hate, it sounds wrong to say it's not a need to do, because it sounds dismissive of somebody else, and it's not meant to. It's just more like, look, I can barely keep up with this shit right now, okay? Let me get this stuff done. And once we can kind of slow down, and not slow down, but automate a little bit more and get things show up on time as they're supposed to, as you all know, Ultimates have been late. If I can just get things going, then I can move on to the next fun ideas, because we should be at JoeCon and we should be there with something special, because that's the place it needs to be. But I'm not quite ready for that jelly yet.
Maybe next year.
Maybe next year, but the same thing. Like if we're talking about next year, I need to be discussing it now. That's the crazy part.
Well, I can tell you, because I helped run that show. You lucked up and you got the right person on this call. We would love to have you in any capacity. If you just wanted to come as a fan and hang out and talk, I would love to talk more with you. But yes, we would roll out the red carpet for Super 7 and do what we need to do. It's a toy show, not a G.I. Joe show. But yeah, it's called Joe Fest, and we would love to have you.
Yeah. And like I said, whether it's you or somebody else, I had already made notes like, hey, we need to get here. And then somebody else from the event, I don't know if it was you or somebody else, emailed me, and I was like, I need to follow back up on that. And then
Probably the owner.
It's still at that point of the, I need to follow back up.
Well, it's the owner, probably Ed Schumacher. And yeah, I'm sure he'll say yes. And it is
Yeah,
logistics. Trust me, we're dealing with logistics at the moment. And I completely understand you segue into the next topic I wanted to cover. Not only the toy shipping situation with everything that's going on, and I know we're a little bit behind on our figures and stuff like that, and I understand the quality checks, and I understand making sure that it's up to our standards, because we're fans. We paid our money. You want us to have the best product, and we want the best product because it is a premium price. But we understand the world. We all have been in this world for the last 5 years, and we know what's going on. So we're not ignorant of this, and we're not the types of people that are going to say those stupid Brian Sevens, Super 7 people, they're not going to do their jobs. They're lazy. But that's not the fact. The facts of it is the real world affects industry, affects businesses, affects health, affects employees showing up to work, affects all kinds of aspects that you don't think about when you get a toy in hand, how many hands this toy went through to get into your hands. And that's the problem a lot of these folks have, Brian. And it's frustrating. And I'm all on board with you about that.
You know, it's frustrating, yes, but it's also not their job to worry about that. You know, that's they're here to buy the toy. The rest of this, that's your problem. And it is my problem. So my job is to try to, as best as I can, as things move along, as we run into roadblocks, make people aware. The hard part, of course, is that, once again, I may be no different than being on this show with you guys. The only people who are going to hear about it are the people that watch this show. All those other people that aren't going to hear about me explaining what's going on or what might be delayed or ahead of schedule or any number of other things. So there's only so much I can do in that regard. And, you know, quite frankly, for everyone, you know, it's very much an emotional thing. Like, they're not buying G.I. Joe toys from me out of some sort of obligation. They're buying it because it resonates with them. It brings a feeling to them. There's an emotion to it. And when they feel that they've put themselves out there emotionally and they're not getting the reciprocal emotion back, then they feel slighted and then they get angry. And so, you know, I try not to take too much of it personally when somebody's really upset. They're like, I paid for this 2 years ago. And it's like, technically it was 11 months ago, but I understand why 11 months would feel like 2 years. And I understand why, you know, you want it. I'm glad that you want it. That means I did something right, that you bought it and you're mad that it's not here because it's giving you some sort of theoretical joy, and the loss of that joy is the exact opposite. But at the same time, there's only so much I can do. There's only so fast we can get. And yeah, while things are getting better and better and everybody's in a more normal space, reality still, like I said, not to get into, you know, you still can't technically go into China. I mean, they just said thing where Americans could go to China, but like, do I really want to send one of my employees to China right now? The answer is no. Mm-hmm. So it slows down the mechanisms. Because if we're talking pre-COVID, somebody that from our company was inside our factories at any given moment, this person's over there for 2 weeks, this person's over there for 3 weeks, this person's over there for 2 weeks. And then you might go every 3 months, every 4 months. But I'm always cycling somebody physically from our side in the factory. So if we need to make a change, see an update, or do something, it can happen like that. Like, oh, hey, the paint on this boot is the wrong color. Go upstairs, repaint it, send it back down. Okay, that's the right color. That change can happen in an hour. Now, this boot is the wrong color. They have to repaint it, put it into FedEx, send it across to us 4 days later. We have to open it up and see if it's the right color. Like, even, you know, a paint change goes from being an hour to being 5 days. And with all this stuff, there's a constant, you know, you go rounds of paint to make sure it's right. So it has slowed down everything immensely. But, you know, does somebody want to hear about the global state of inter-country trade and health restrictions? No, I want to know where my fucking GI Joe is that I paid for. And both responses are valid. So I just try to be as transparent as I can with people. And usually, once the emotion goes through them, and then you can say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, then as long as they know that somebody's making the effort and is not dismissive of them, then most people are okay. Then there's people that it doesn't matter what I do, they're not going to be happy.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a very deep, interesting world of, it's hard to say or hard to put. It's and I think that you've done a really good job of explaining it, that they want that product so badly that they're willing to get upset. That's a great positive outlook, to take. So kudos on that. I wanted to turn this back over. Eduardo, do you have any more questions that you wanted to?
Nope. I think actually I did. I pretty much got what I wanted to ask and got it answered.
I've got one more, and then I'll let David go again. So I've watched a few of the interviews, and you've said that as far as the larger scale items that you had done with, and specifically to GI Joe, that we got the dog sled, very expensive, super hard to track down. At this point, it's not online. Last I checked, was it?
I think it's we've still got plenty in inventory.
Really?
Surprisingly so. Yeah, I couldn't get it on shelf at Target. I couldn't get anybody to give me the shelf space for it. So yeah, no, we still have them. They're around.
Okay.
They're still just regular retail dollar. I think that's always the funny part to me is that I'm not saying this directed at you, but people will tell me all the time, like, I can't find this. I've looked everywhere. And I'm like, hey, did you look at Super 7? And they're like, oh, no, like come to our website. I bet you we have that.
I actually did go to Super 7 and I was looking for it and I couldn't find it on the website. But that's probably
if
just
it's not, then I'm going to be on
my
my web guy. Sorry. Okay.
That's probably just my inability to navigate that. As you can see, I also don't have video, so that might say something.
I'm also going to double check it once we hang up, and if it's not, I will be sending an email to my webmaster going, "Hey, where's the Arctic Rescue Pack at?"
I think that's been like 2 months ago, 2 or 3 months. I was looking for it then, but my question is I know you've said with that set that it was a very expensive set, very hard to do. I would love to see another pass at the vehicle, at the larger playset series of things, and I know that that's a little, a bit, it definitely comes down to a cost factor, and I believe, and I'm just quoting you from another one, that you've said that dioramas are not exactly the way to go, that those don't really move. Is there something in between that you would like to see come out of the vehicle packs and set? I know there's several items myself I would like to see, such as the MacGuffins and things of that nature, but I'll let you take it.
Okay, I want to answer that, but I just got a text that just says I need to let somebody into the office real quick because the door's locked. So I'm going to be back in 20 seconds, and then we're going to talk about all that stuff. Okay, so do like the freeze frame and be like, and then I'll be right back.
And see, this is a good point where we should have like the old GI Joe bumpers. Dun 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 dun.
Unfortunately, we're not at that. I love talking to Brian Flynn. He's very interesting, and he's given us a lot to think about here. And I look forward to continuing this discussion momentarily.
Oh yeah.
Do you guys have any more insights that you want to press him with? What's going on in GI Joe?
I think that's my last question, unless something sparks out of the conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of the same way. Oh,
Sorry about that. That was my bookkeeper, so I had to let her in.
Whoa, okay, yeah, no, that's somebody you really got to let in.
You know,
Definitely.
yeah, you got to pay the bills. All right, so back to your thing. Yeah, the hardest part around vehicles is same thing. Like they're, how much tooling goes into an action figure. Multiply that times 4, 6, 8, whatever the physical volume of space that vehicle needs to take up. So your cost to produce is exponentially higher. Secondarily, as many of you obviously know, as toy collectors, the amount of action figures you have versus vehicles is usually very disproportionate. And the number of collectors that you know over the time that say, especially with G.I. Joe, because they've made so many vehicles, I only collect the figures because I don't have room for the vehicles. So then you have a much smaller group of people that actually buy vehicles. So vehicles get to be tricky. I would like to do more of them, and I've got a plan. Around something for G.I. Joe.
Okay.
But it's just that it's a fine line between that would be cool to do versus can it actually be fiscally responsible to do. And so there's sort of two strata. You're either going to go small and affordable and try to sell a lot of them, or you're going to go big and crazy and you're not going to sell a whole lot, but you're going to target that guy that has to have it. The Thunder Tank's shown up a couple times where it's like, okay, we're going to make this Thunder Tank, but if we're going to make it, it's got to fit the figures. It's got to be this big and this scale, and it's kind of ridiculous. So how many people are going to go down the ridiculous well with us? We'll find out. So with G.I. Joe, obviously, we want to make sure that we are staying away from what Classified is doing. Classified is doing a wonderful job, and they're making a lot of cool stuff and a lot of cool vehicles. So I think that we have identified a vehicle that has never been made, and we're going to make it at the 3 3/4 scale. But even at the 3 3/4 scale, it's stupid to make it.
I don't think so.
So
Is it going to be compatible with our O-ring figures? That's
of course it would be. Anything at 3 3/4 would be compatible.
There you go.
So
I already know what it is.
I don't want to get too far out there. It's still in its early stages of trying to really, because there's a fine line between that's big, cool, and expensive, and that's too big and too expensive. But to pull it off, we wouldn't be able to make it, $40 figure, $40 vehicle, $60 vehicle. It'd have to be like, no, this is going to cost several hundred of dollars to make.
And I see. I think that was kind of my thing with the HISS tank, with the Classified HISS tank, is it didn't. It wasn't really what I was looking for. I'm not really into the 6-inch line. So reaction is where my wheelhouse is playing at. So I didn't actually get the HISS tank, but I did get the Robo Scope because it does fit 3 3/4. And I'm wondering if maybe that's a model moving forward, that they are interchangeable, that you can scale them up and scale it down, to fit both versions of Ultimates and Reaction.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so tricky because, a lot of times we'll look at that and go, okay, well, you didn't get, like, HISS tank is just a good example. Like, oh, we could make a 3 3/4 HISS tank, but what does it cost for you to go buy a 3 3/4 HISS tank on eBay right now? And it's like, well, you can probably buy a vintage one loose for cheaper than I can make a new one for.
And it just did the Walmart 4-inch one, like 3 versions of it not too long ago.
Oh, no. I think you guys, I think you're misunderstanding me in that. I think that wherever you're going, you say it's a vehicle that's never been produced. That is the right way to go. Producing a HISS tank would be the wrong way to go. My example was though the his tank that Hasbro put out was for a 6-inch scale, figure, versus the Robo Skull that put out was for 6-inch, and you could change the canopy, and then it could fit 3 3/4. You could change
You're talking about
modulability.
Modulating.
I'm very surprised that no one showed up and told them that they weren't allowed to make that. But there's quite a few people making some GI Joe stuff out there that we all know probably shouldn't be. I'm surprised with that one, and not in a negative way. I love the Robo Skull, but who owns that and where does it come from? I've talked to that guy once. It's like, it's a very dicey line on who owns that IP.
He has a copyright. He does. He got it from Hasbro or whoever he got it from. He's legally able to do what he's doing.
Yeah. But the idea of being able to swap out the cockpit size and do stuff like that, it's a really cool idea. The ship that we're going for with that, if we even tried to remod it to 6-inch scale, it would have to be the size of the small Datsun. But that's if it works. Right now we're in preliminary sculpt, and can we make it work? Can we make it to where it's something that is reasonable for people to get? And maybe it won't work. I don't know. But the hardest part around vehicles is just, you're talking to a very small subset of collectors. Everybody likes them, but do they buy them? It's easier for me to talk about it.
I don't know if that invades your information privacy stuff, but how many people bought this Thundercat? How many orders did you fulfill with this for the people that ordered it 2 years ago?
I can't tell you that.
I didn't think so.
I can't tell you that, but it was okay. It was more than fine for us to make it, but even then, I don't know. It was fine. It was good. Same thing like the Electrocharger was a good release for us as well for Thundercats. The problem once again is when we start going into that, even if we start thinking about something like, oh, it'd be cool to make, I'm just going to use an easy example so no one read into it. Like, oh, we should make a Serpentor's Chariot for this. And it's like, well, Classified's making that. We don't need two of those with two different aesthetics at the same scale at the same time. That's not really there. And I don't want there to create any weirdness. So, it's been tricky where a lot of this stuff has been done. And then you start getting into like, okay, what's the stuff that hasn't been done? Oh, we could do, I'm blanking on the technical name, but like the hang gliders with the rocket engines.
The claws.
What's that?
The claws.
You cut out both times on me.
Oh, sorry. I think it's called the Cobra Claw. It's like that. It's like a small white hang glider that goes by rocket engine.
But it's got like the jet engine things on the back of it and stuff. It's like, okay, that could be a cool thing where we could affordably get it out. But are there enough people who are like, oh, fuck yeah, that's a cool ship? Or are they like, that's not really what I wanted. I wanted his tank. I would like to be able to do more vehicles, but where they function best is that middle scale where they're in this size range, and they're $150 or less. That works. You cross that plane and it gets real dicey real quick. And so if you're talking about like, oh, you guys should make a Sky Striker, it'd be like, if we make a Sky Striker, it's going to have to be $350. And then that guy's like, I don't need that.
Yeah. And those are none of the things I want to see from Reaction, right? The things I want to see are the things that haven't been done, where you're headed already. I want to see like a Silent Castle. I want to see a Cobra transport chopper. I want to see a what else am I missing here, David? There's some big ones. How about the
Aspid.
cartoon?
Aspid is the number one asked for GI Joe or Cobra vehicle that Hasbro or nobody else has done, and it's for 3 3/4, and it would be a simple thing to. I'm not gonna. I have to take that word away.
You're like, it's simple, it's easy. Just
Not
go make
simple.
it.
Not no. It's gonna be. I would think it wouldn't. It would not be as difficult to make as people might think, because you can use all the dozens of hisses, and it could carry those hisses. You could add some extra little things with it, some googly gut, a pilot, some nets, whatever. But I think that is something that's in that scale that you're talking about that has never been done and could work for Super 7 and for original GI Joes.
But then the community the community has to be able to willing to throw money at.
Oh,
too.
they
And
will.
that
Trust
cost,
me.
right?
Yeah,
So-
but that's
what
where you
Brian
get
said earlier.
this is the same thing. This is where you get, David, the differential between where you're like, trust me. It's like that trust me might be 1,000 people, but 1,000 people is a lot of people if you're trying to order dinner. 1,000 people is not a lot of people if you're trying to order a vehicle.
Right.
Also, I've seen like plenty of behind the scenes stuff where not with toys, but like, well, yeah, with toys, and some of the more obscure toy lines in the 80s where it was like, oh well, trust me, this will go really great. This will go really great. We've done our research. Kids will love it. And then you just need that one monkey wrench that just throws everything. And it's like, okay, this surefire thing just fell apart.
Anything that's a surefire thing will never be a surefire thing. That's
Exactly. It's right there in the name. It's not. But there are definitely. I see exactly what you're saying. Right. There are definite things in the zeitgeist that the fan bases of certain things, like the Star Charger with Mandura, that was a character that should have been made in the original line. She was a major supporting character, not a major character, but a supporting character that was in, I don't know, 10, 12 episodes, I guess, that people wanted that never got. So that was one of those things. Yes, finally. And yeah, people bought the figure, or they bought the vehicle and the figure. I was the person that got the vehicle and the figure, because I was like, you can't have the figure without the vehicle. That's silly, So I'm one of those suckers. You got me, but but
I prefer fan. Sucker just sounds so negative.
Oh, sorry. So that's the thing that I'm looking at. Like Silverhawks, for example, if we did the Thunder Tag, could we do the Silverhawks jet? We have the figure already, but is that a feasible vehicle? Is it a middle vehicle? It's definitely smaller, I would say, scale-wise, than the Thunder Tank. But is that a feasible vehicle? Speculatively, this is not happening.
Well, I think when you're talking about something like Thundercats or even Silverhawks, like it's much more feasible because there really hasn't been made that much. Where when you're talking about G.I. Joe, it's while there have been years where people have said there's not enough G.I. Joe product and it's not getting the love that it needs, no one can be saying that about the line right now. Like there's plenty of G.I. Joe product being made, and there's plenty of people paying attention to it. So there's also that, like how much has been done, what has been available, how many, what we talk a lot about internally is, this is going to sound clinical, but like managing the collector wallet. Like how much money can I ask you to spend over the course of a year? Because quite frankly, I'm not the only thing you're buying. If I make too much and it's too hard to keep up, you'll drop the line. So I even if something's working, there's only so much I can realistically make and not have people get burned out on it. And even though people are going, give me more, I love this. Yeah, I have to be cognizant about what that really means, which is there's only so much to go around. And being aware of that is also tricky.
So my spouse would agree with you, and I have to ask you, where should I sign my check over to? Who should I sign it to? Brian Flynn or Super 7?
No, get the controller, the bookkeeper that's here. Like,
Because
that's
you got plenty of my money, trust me.
yeah. I mean, it's not like I'm just trying to make, people would always call it imposter syndrome or whatever. It's like, I'm still one of those things where I'm like, I'm going to try to make as much cool stuff from as much licenses as I like while I can, because sooner or later, somebody's going to wake up one of these days and go, why are we letting that guy make stuff? And then it'll be over. Or at least that's what I feel like. So, that's why it's sometimes for people, it's not the version of the thing that they want to see. And it's like, because I'm not making, it's not out of disrespect for the people buying my product, but it's like, these are the versions I want to have. And I hope that you want them too. And ideally, we both come together. But I know, like I said, with the 3 3/4 figures as reaction figures, I know for a fact if I could make O-ring, I'd sell more. But
Definitely.
that's not what we have the rights to make. And we make reaction figures. So we're making 5 POA G.I. Joe. And I'm sorry if you always wanted CoverGirl like that in, G.I. Joe articulation, O-ring articulation, but that's not what we're making right now. And I hope that you can appreciate what we did make.
I definitely can.
And I can too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can say that I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with all of us today. We've covered a wide breadth of topics and stuff like that, and I appreciate your understanding of how we've done this today. It's been fun, and it's been a learning experience, because I've learned quite a lot from you, and I always do whenever I watch you at different points with different other hosts and stuff like that. So
we're talking about toys. It's not like this is hard work. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, let me get this straight. So we want to jump in with some buddies and talk about G.I. Joe for a couple hours. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, twist my arm. All right.
Yeah.
What do we want to, let's get into? Which hairstyle CoverGirl we want to talk about here? We talking about blonde or brunette?
Long-haired brunette.
Yeah, there's a specific there. Well, it's
In a
the
bikini.
same thing like
Yeah.
when we did the Cobra female troopers. I was like, we have to have long hair, short hair, redhead, blondes. We have to have everybody. You got to have them all.
I'll tell you, I am very appreciative that you cut back on the troop builders. Not that I don't like the troopers, I do, and I've gotten every one thus far. It was difficult, and I understand you probably got a lot of people saying the same thing that I'm saying, that we need a bit of a break.
It's been a fine line. The way we approached it was, you only need to buy one. But if you're that person that does Army build, they don't look all the same. But you really only need to buy one Cobra female trooper. And then, but if you're the Army builder person that wants to buy 4 female Army troopers in your diorama, you could get 4 that look slightly different, because that would be cooler. But a lot of people definitely went down the route too, which is like, well, now I got to buy every single variant. And it's like, that wasn't the intent necessarily. The intent was, we made the Cobra female trooper, and they just happened to be a variety of things. So
I thought, maybe I'm missing this, but I thought when the MP was revealed that he was in Caucasian colors, but the one I got in the mail was an African-American version. Am I mistaken that there are multiple MPs, that you're doing that thing you said earlier with that?
there is a different MP coming out later.
Oh, okay.
But
right.
yeah, we've cut down on the variants in there, because it did become a thing where, it was difficult for retailers, because they were like, now that it's 9 different products I have to carry. And it's like, no, it's one product. Just let them get whichever. It's like, we can't let them just get whichever. It has to be specific. And then secondarily, a lot of people were like, it's too much. So we've cut down on how that is coming out. But yeah, like, we did one MP, there will be a different MP variant later.
Is it large?
Okay, so
The MP never got made. Like, how did the MP never get made?
You're right. Because we have that plate set for where the MP should be. But there's no MP. We have to put Recondo there or whoever, Bazooka or whatever.
Well, think about how long it took for us to get green shirts, or some sort of, or basic
shirt.
generic Joe Troopers. That took until 2004, 2005. I don't know. I remember it was the Valor versus Venom line. And then we had to wait maybe a couple of more years to get green shirts that look something like the cartoons, and then we had to wait even longer until Super 7 did an entire thing of green shirts.
And a camouflage version.
Yep.
But did you have something, Hawk?
No. David, go ahead.
I was thinking something. I was going to go someplace and I lost my train of thought.
Okay. I was just thinking about Brian's time, so
Yes, well, I was trying to wrap up, but then he kind of brought this thing, a variant, and I thought it was a good part to cover why we had him here. Cool, Lady J. We got
Hello.
You're gonna be getting those in
lady.
about a month and a half, hopefully.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's blister covers on here now, so it makes it hard to see the faces and stuff. But
Yeah.
she turned out
I do say
amazing. I'm not saying that
it's
just to
great.
say that.
It's great having another Lady J figure that doesn't have that damn hat.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's people that do
Whoa.
like the hat. Now, see, this is the thing, though. You're doing Baroness version 1, and you did Snake Eyes version 1. Some of these things are obvious. We're going to get Snake Eyes version 2. We're going to get Baroness version 2. It's obvious. It's just a never, right?
Yeah.
Ooh.
There's Destro.
Now, was there
Sound
some
lighting is not
issue?
helping.
One of these had an issue that I think, who was it that had the issue? Was it Destro or something? You announced?
No, it was just double checking. There was a paint deco thing that we weren't 100% sure on because we got a sample that showed up wrong, and we're like, why is this one wrong? And it's like, it turned out to be just an early sample that they packaged later. And so it showed up to us where it's like, oh, we got a whole bunch of advanced samples, but one is wrong. And so we have to then make sure that that's not, systemic. So then it's like, stop the presses, make sure this thing has the correct paint because I got one that's wrong. But it's like, oh, when they were sending us our advanced samples, they're grabbing the stuff that they've got and putting it together, and they grabbed one of the wrong ones. So I'm like, all right, stop. Because if this goes out like that, it's a problem. And they're like, no, it didn't. We're like, we're sending somebody to the factory to double check. And like I said, they went through the pallets, pulled one from this pallet, one from that pallet, one from that pallet, and then just checked them all. And they're all good. Put them back on the boats. But that was because we talked about it beforehand. But for everybody else, Wave 2 started shipping this week, and will continue shipping next week from the factories. You'll start seeing it 6 to 8 weeks from now in your hands.
And then Wave 3 is July, I believe. And I know you said years ago the way that you'd like to do these things is to get a couple waves in hand and then reveal the next wave and so on. So they were coming out every 4 months. Now they're 5-6 months, I guess, it's the schedule.
In the ideal world, it is, they're on it's a 12-month process every 4 months. So Wave 3 delivers, you start on Wave 4, 3 months later, it's like clockwork, every 4 months, and it's fine. No, Wave 4 is coming up very soon. It's coming up next month because you've got Wave 1 in hand. So now we'll do Wave 4, and then ideally Wave 2 will be in hand shortly, and then after that we'll do Wave 5.
They'll have some cool San Diego Comic-Con variant maybe in between there.
I have no idea.
Yes, you do.
Actually, I know exactly, but I'm not going to say. I need you to focus on what we're talking about today. I need you to worry about Wave 4. Worry about April Fool's Day. That's what we're worried about right now.
All right. All right. I'm so used to being ahead of things because I'm a big comic book reader. So they always put stuff 3-4 months in advance and tell you when it's going to come out. And you have to wait 4 months to get it. So I'm prepared. I'm trained. I'm already in that ingrained thought process. So I'm always looking. I'm that guy that wants to know this information ahead of time. You know, some people
Oh
don't.
no, if I told you what was in wave 4, you'd be like, that's great. What's in wave 5? If I told you what's in wave 5, you'd be like, that's great. What's in wave 6? It's like, let's
You're
worry
right.
about wave 4.
Okay.
Yep. Delayed gratification, Mr. Allen. Delayed gratification.
I know. So
Okay.
again,
So,
I want to say thank you, Brian Flynn, for giving us your time, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule, because I know you have a lot going on and you're a very busy guy, and I appreciate it. You don't know how much I appreciate it. Like I said, you're a hero of mine. And if Hawk and Eduardo would like to say something before we break this party up.
Yep. I just want to kind of reiterate, thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking part of your time. And hey, fellow toy collector, always good to talk. And if anybody ever gives you any grief about Super 7, it's like, it's only 5 POA. The Classic Joes had all this articulation. Here's an exhibit that, you can mention to them. Deep 6. All he can do is the arms at the elbow. So it's like, yeah. So not always.
Not always.
Just say Deep 6 version 1.
Hawk?
So Brian, it's been wonderful to talk to you, and I've found out a lot of things I didn't know. So thank you, David and Brian both, and of course Eduardo for bringing us through this. And it's been a true pleasure. Thank you.
No, thanks guys for having me. Like I said, it's fun to talk about toys, and it's not lost on me. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, David, that we're getting to do the thing that everybody else wants to do, which is you sit around with your friends and go, wouldn't it be cool if we made this? Wouldn't it be cool if we made that? We're getting to do that right now, and it is by no means lost on me. So I'm happy to share the experience, if you will, with everybody, because I'm as shocked as anybody else is that we're in this position. So I'm going to run with it as much as I can.
Well, then I want to say thank you, everybody out there, for tuning in, and we will see you next time.